We're talking about how to start an LLC in Arizona, and what you can see behind me here is the checklist that I'm casting to the screen. And we're going to be jumping through a lot of different content in this video, and some of the main things we're going to be doing is talking about how to avoid the LLC dumpster fire. Now, the way that you do that is by understanding terms such as piercing the corporate veil, registered agents, commingling funds, pass-through taxation, how the LLC renewal process works, and then understanding business licenses and permits. Now, to understand all these things better, what I want to do is actually explain what an LLC actually does for your business. So we're going to kind of zoom out and then zoom in. And by the end of this video series, you're not only going to be able to know how to start your LLC, but how to properly maintain it. So why don't we go into the checklist and start with understanding exactly what your LLC does for you. Now, as mentioned before, it offers limited liability protection. And it also offers pass-through taxation. Why don't we, to explain this, go into an example of owning a coffee shop without an LLC. Now, what you can see here is a business owner in the middle of the screen here, and everything is connected to him: his personal home, personal car, personal bank account, but also the business items as well. The business bank account, the point of sale, the actual location, the espresso machines, the lights. Now, this is assuming that he owns a coffee shop without an LLC. Now, what does it look like if you own that same coffee shop, but it's an LLC that owns it? Well, now it looks a little bit different. Now you can see the business owner on the left-hand side here, his personal bank account, home, and car. And then on the right-hand side are the LLC assets. That red line in the middle is something called the corporate veil. Now, you recall earlier we talked about something called piercing the corporate veil. Let's go through a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that somebody were to get hurt in your coffee shop and they're trying to sue you. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to hire an attorney, and that attorney is going to look for cracks in your LLC. And if they're able to find a crack and a judge agrees with them that this isn't a legit LLC, what they can do is pierce the corporate veil and get rid of this red division. That's really important to understand, because if they do that, that means they can come after your business and personal assets. The whole purpose of an LLC is to limit your liability by separating your business and personal assets, and that's what piercing the corporate veil means. Now, what I want to do at this point too is explain what pass-through taxation is. This doesn't really impact you as far as setting up your LLC, but it's helpful to understand once it comes to tax time. Now, pass-through taxation. Let's say that same LLC, that Acme Coffee LLC we're calling it, grossed $140,000 and expenses of $90,000 with net income of $50,000. The way this works with an LLC and pass-through taxation, the IRS is not taxing the LLC. They're taxing the business owner who owns the LLC. This $50,000 of net income passes through. It's also called flow-through taxation. It goes to your personal income statement here, where the IRS is taxing the business owner. Now, I mention this because there's a lot of times with content saying like set up an LLC, you can save on taxes. And people are saying that because it's like, well, you have business deductions and things like these that you can write off. You can do that if you just set up a sole proprietorship too. The reason you set up that LLC is the extra limited liability protection. But what I want to tease right now is the fact that you can set up an S Corp in the future. So you can start as an LLC, and then once your business starts making around $40,000 to $50,000 in net income, then you can set up what's called an S Corporation, and you can do that by actually changing the designation of your LLC. Now, that's something we're going to be talking about in a couple of videos from now, and as we go down this checklist here, we're going to be getting into some of these other items here in future videos. But I just really wanted to explain what an LLC does, so now we can jump into the checklist itself. You can see before LLC formation, the first one here is get this checklist for yourself and explore bonus and glossary. Now, there's a QR code on the screen. This is a completely free checklist for you to grab for yourself to run through your LLC. But I also wanted to make mention of the bonus section here. Now, in the bonus, there's an AI chatbot. So if you have questions, you'll be able to ask the chatbot things such as like, how do I start an LLC? Or you can even say, how to start LLC in Arizona. And this is going to give you detailed steps on that. If you're not familiar with what an EIN is, we're going to be explaining that in a little bit as well. But this is really helpful. There's a free charitable opportunity you can look into. This yearly accounting calendar we're going to get into. Very helpful for knowing what dates matter when you're getting your LLC set up. All this available for you within this checklist here. So next up, what I want to do is decide which route you want to go. Do you want to go with the state website? Do you want to go through an online LLC service or an attorney? The next video in this series, we're going to deep dive on this topic because it can get pretty nuanced. What I'll say is if you go through the state website, the experience isn't as good, but you're not going to be upsold a whole lot of things, right? There is an expedited filing fee that you can do. But besides that, the state's not going to pitch you on banking services, tools to help you set up your website, domain, email, all of that. That's also the downside as well, is that you're going to have to then go through other providers to do that. When you use online LLC services, a lot of them offer a free package plus state fee. So it's the same as if you go through the state or an online tool. but then there's a lot of upsells that they offer you. Now, if you go through an attorney, the advantage there is if you have a complicated process that you're working through, maybe you have a business partner or you already have employees, you're already netting over $50,000 in net income. Maybe those are reasons that you want to talk to an attorney. Again, in the next video, we'll deep dive on those. But for the sake of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through as if you were getting an LLC set up through the state of Arizona. So decide on a business name for your LLC. What I'll say on this one is sometimes people like blow this out of proportion. Like they think it's super important. The reason I say it's not is you could have something like Acme Coffee LLC, but then you can decide that the brand name is Espresso Yourself Cafe or something like that, right? Then what you can do is you can have the LLC and then you can have a fictitious name or a DBA, a doing business as name underneath it. And that's the brand name that people see. The important thing for your LLC is that it is a unique name within the state of Arizona. That is the really important thing. So let's say that what you want to do next is search availability for your business name. So we'll say that you came up with a name. We'll call it whatever you want, but what you're going to do is you can go to this article here, and then we're going to click on Arizona, and then each state has a database like this. So entity name. Now, let's say we do Wildcats. That's a pretty popular name in Arizona. If I name availability check, it says the entity name is not available, all right? But then if I do something crazy and I just go like this on the keyboard, name availability check, it says the name is available. So that is what you're looking for in the state of Arizona once you have your name. And this is the actual state's website database. You're not going through a third party for this. So now let's say you have your name for your LLC. You've checked and it's available. Now you can actually go through the steps of forming your LLC. So why don't we take a look at this? First step is registering your LLC name. In this next item here, we have a state directory list, and I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit. But when again, you go to Arizona, there are ways for each state typically that you can register the LLC and then actually file your articles of organization. When you file your articles of organization, that's the document that actually sets up your LLC. But the way that I would describe this is like, let's say you're starting a website, but you don't have the time or resources to actually build the website, but you want to secure that domain name. That's what you're doing when you register the LLC name, is you're just getting that name, and then later you have to file the articles of organization. So this is the page that Arizona is going to have you set up your account, and then it's going to walk you through all the steps. But what I want to do at this particular point is talk about assigning a registered agent, because the articles of organization is pretty simple as far as what it asks you, but it's going to ask you about a registered agent, and that can be a little bit confusing. Now, if you're not familiar, what a registered agent is a third party that handles important documentation and communication for your business. So let's go back to that coffee shop example and you're being sued. Well, that's called a service of process notice, is when somebody's saying that you have to show up in court. Well, that registered agent is going to make sure that you get that documentation, that you have any documents that you need when you're showing up to court. There are two rules for your registered agent. They have to have a physical address within the state of Arizona. And then number two, it can't be a P.O. box. Now, there are professional registered agent services out there. What I'd recommend is going with a professional service. And in the next video, we're actually going to be talking about a service that provides a free registered agent for the first year. But it's just something that you should, again, it's one of those things where you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, making sure you have no cracks in your LLC. So get a good professional registered agent on hand. Now, once you assign your registered agent, you're going to file your articles of organization with the Secretary of State. And again, this is a process that you go through with the state website. What I'll say for filing the articles of organization right now as making this video, it's $50 that you have to pay to the state. There's no way around that fee, whether you are going through the state website, an online tool, or an attorney. You're going to pay that $50 to the Secretary of State. And then what you want to do is create and sign an LLC operating agreement. Now, in the state of Arizona, this is not currently required to start up an LLC, but what that operating agreement does is it spells out everything within your business. Now, let's say that you had a partner that you're starting the coffee shops with, and the business explodes and you have 20 locations. And then one day something happens in your business partner's life and they want to leave the business. How do you handle that exit? Well, if it's not spelled out already in an operating agreement, which an operating agreement typically spells out like who are the people involved, what are their roles and responsibilities, what happens if somebody were to exit the business, what's going to end up happening is you're going to go through a lot of litigation to have attorneys get involved to determine how much those shares are worth for that partner. So that's why it's so important to set up an operating agreement, because it helps to just be like one of those things where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's just being very proactive in your business and making sure, again, you're setting yourself up for success for your new business. Now, after LLC formation, you need to set up an EIN. There's an IRS link here, and this will explain basically what an EIN is, but it's an employer identification number. It's basically a social security number for your business for the IRS. So if they're taxing you, they're going to use that EIN number. Now, it's not always required to get it set right away, but it's a good idea to do this because let's say you have employees, you're going to need an EIN number. If you're setting up a business bank account or you're applying for a loan, it makes you look more professional if you're using an EIN instead of your social security number. And you can do this for free here with the IRS. You can apply online and it'll take you through the steps. Also, the online LLC services, they will do this for you. Usually it's an additional fee because it's a little extra work, but just know it's a good idea to get that EIN set up right away. Now, we're going to talk about business licenses and permits for your LLC. This is a good resource here from the SBA that you can check out. I'm not going to get into right now, but you can actually look at things based on your state and territory. But basically, the easiest example that I can give here is, let's say you're starting a brewery. Now, a brewery has a lot of different aspects to it. You might be brewing beer, you might be distributing beer, you might be serving beer at the location. All three of those things may have different licenses and permits that are required. And sometimes those licenses and permits are required on the federal level, the state level, and then your local government level. So maybe even your town or city is going to require a permit to serve alcohol or distribute alcohol, things like that. So this is something after LLC formation you want to search. You can go to Google and just search your state, your town. If you want to actually start, you can call your town clerk and get information from them because they might be a helpful resource. This is also something too where if you get a CPA involved, sometimes they'll have insights on these things as well. But another mention for some of the online LLC services, they actually offer this as an extra additional service where they will help you research what licenses and permits you need for your business category based on your location. What I want to do now, though, is just quickly cover some of the things that are going to be talked about in the next video in this series. We're going to get into the fees associated with your LLC. We actually have a calculator that's going to show you down to the dollar what your LLC is going to cost for the first 5 years in Arizona. We have this star rating system explaining the differences between the state, online services, and business attorneys. We're going to deep dive into that. We're going to discuss how state websites become a pain when it comes to domestic and foreign LLCs. If that's something you're not familiar with, you want to check that out. And then we're going to go into questions worth asking. So this is mainly geared towards, does it make sense for you to potentially use an attorney based on your situation? And we're going to be getting into real specifics here and going over all that in the next video. So again, make sure you get this free LLC checklist for yourself. And I'm going to catch you in that next video.